All right, let's call this meeting to order. Roll, please.
Showalter.
Here.
Myers. Howard.
Here.
Redland. Thompson.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome and good evening, everybody. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment this evening? I believe we do. Mr. Mossbarger, if you want to go ahead and come up here to the podium and just introduce yourself and let us know what's on your mind this evening.
So I'm John Mossberger. I'd like to speak about the nativity scene. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the nativity scene that used to be around the hospital. It was started 35 years ago. It sat in storage for probably 10 years now. And there's a group of us that's like, let's check this out, see how bad a shape it's in. We'd heard it's in disrepair, and we opened the trailers, and it's surprisingly very good shape. Needs some work, and there's a group of us looking to put that kind of back out for the community, and something we've thought about is putting that at Rosewood Park. We've got two concerns with putting it around the hospital that we think that would alleviate being at the park. The first is vandalism, and the other is the wind, and those are both, kind of concerns around the hospital with the open space.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, open space on the west side there that leaves more prone to vandalism and more prone to the wind damage. If we were to put it around Rosewood, we'd have housing around that, gives a little bit of sense of security with ring doorbells, etc. And then it also would protect from the wind a little bit. So we're kind of coming to ask for permission to be able to put it in the city park. And as far as what we'd expect from the city, we've got plans of doing all the work to set it up, tear it down, any repairs needing done, any welding that might need done on the structures. So would not be asking for anything necessarily but permission to put it in the city park. And hopefully in the future, maybe the possibility of getting cord to power some lights, something like that. But this first year for sure would mostly just be looking for permission to do that project.
Yeah, no, I mean, I, along with many of us here, I grew up looking at that nativity scene around the hospital for many, many, many years. I do guess one question I have is there enough room at Rosewood to fit that whole thing? I recall it being a quite large and lots of pieces.
It was large, so there's 8 scenes. We're looking into some grant money to lighten up some of those scenes. They're made out of plywood, and they're 12 foot wide, 16 foot wide, plywood connected. So like the Bethlehem scene, we're looking at actually having that put on canvas like you'd have on a billboard with aluminum backing. So this first year, we're probably going to do a condensed version of it that we can get to with the time that we have and tell the story of the nativity scene. But I believe there's plenty of room in Rosewood. And one thing about that park is it doesn't intersect into like a main road like Gulick intersects into Caldwell.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got kind of some traffic jams, some concerns there. Where Rosewood's kind of more off the beaten path. People could make a trip around the park and take it all in.
I know you kind of live up in that area. As being a resident up there, do you have any concerns about the extra traffic that might create in a residential area?
I don't have concerns, and I haven't talked to all of my neighbors concerning that yet, but I know in Christmas time it's kind of been a tradition to have the lanterns up there. That's not so much anymore, but there's still a lot of lights. So we get a lot of traffic already, just people out sightseeing.
Sure. So you're not going to light any of it this first year then, you don't think?
We're looking at options to use solar-powered lights,
Okay.
unless the city wanted to help us get into some power there, but we're looking into those options right now of solar lights.
I don't have any questions. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of nostalgia in the community for that nativity scene, for a lot of people here. And I think, it would be awesome to see it up and going again. I think it's something we can definitely discuss we'll bring it up maybe later in our discussion items. We can discuss a little further. We can talk with our parks director, see his thoughts, and discuss a little more amongst ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and I'm glad to hear that somebody is, at least has a desire to want to take that on, because it is a very large project to have to take on, so.
Okay, appreciate your time.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you. All right, anybody else signed up for public comment? Okay, let's move on to consent agenda. We have A, the 8/7/2023 commission meeting minutes, B, the 8/14/2023 joint commission meeting minutes, and C, appropriation ordinances 2023-16, 2023-16A, 2023-16B, and 2023-P16. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns on any of those tonight?
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items A, B, and C.
I have a motion by Commissioner Showalter,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Howard. Any other further discussion? Roll, please.
Howard,
Yes.
Redland, Myers, Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, we got a lot of empty spaces on the agenda tonight. That's all right. So let's bounce on down to discussion items. Let's start with A, the water tower inspection report and recommendations from Viking.
Thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, I think just like to kind of briefly say how I got here. My name's Rick Penner, and I live in Heston, Kansas. And I originally, I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but I spent a lot of years working with architects, engineers. I was a coating manufacturer's representative for paint companies for almost 30 years, primarily in the water tank business. So I was the guy that specified your coatings on your south tank, on the south tank way back around, I don't know, it was 99, 2000, somewhere around there. So I've been around a while. My company is Viking, and we're based out of Omaha. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our company, just so you know our qualifications. Viking's been around since 2001. In 2018, it moved to Omaha and took on a little different role. We have lots of folks that work for us that are qualified by being NACE certified inspectors. We have people that sit on AWWA boards. We offer full service for water towers, water tanks in general, cleaning, inspecting, painting, repairing, all those types of things. We take a little different approach than a lot of people do. We do a lot of consulting and try to work together with people to come up with the best solutions. That's kind of where my role comes in. We also have some other companies within our company. Really the one that would matter where we live is Mongan Painting, which is another contractor that's part of Viking that does a lot of wastewater stuff, sewer rehab, that kind of thing. So Viking is one of the larger companies in the nation for water tower maintenance overall. I didn't realize this till just recently, but 40,000 gallons is a lot of paint.
There's a lot of paint.
That's a lot of paint. Now I know why the owners are constantly beating on everybody on that stuff, right? I mean, it's when we have leftovers on jobs, we got to be careful with it. That's for sure, because must be a lot of leftovers. My qualifications, like I mentioned, I was in the coating industry for almost 30 years. I was NACE certified inspector in 2001, and I've just been in the coating industry and the water tank industry for a long time. So, what I want to do is briefly show you what you have, okay? And there's more to it. There's more complete reports in here that I've provided as we did the dive inspections. The other part I'll say about my history is I came and climbed all the tanks, I think in 2020, I think, maybe 20 or, yeah, it might have been the start of 2021. But I came and climbed all the tanks myself, did my own inspections on them at that time. And now through this dive inspections, I was also here the 3 days that the dive crew was here and climbed all the tanks. So I'm very familiar with what you have. So when we're looking at a water tower, water tank, I should say, in the state of Kansas, anyway, we worry what KDHE says, we worry what OSHA says, and we worry what AWWA says, American Water Works Association. And the things that we're looking at on a water tower is the structural conditions of it, the coatings and what condition they are, sanitary conditions, safety, and security. You know, I guess if you had to put them in some logical order, you know, the sanitary issues, obviously, and the safety issues would be the top two if you're trying to prioritize things. So your north tank. Just the exterior coatings, it's got an aluminum coating on it that's in good condition. Yeah, it's got a bunch of checks where people throw rocks at it and that kind of thing. But the point is, the coatings are not overly thick that are on it. I always use a description like, my house, it was built in 1930, the more I paint it, the more it peels, right? I don't think you'll have that problem with this tank. And I like leaving aluminum coating systems that are on there. Going back with aluminum is an inexpensive thing that really still is very viable and works very well. You could do something different with it if you wanted to, color-wise, but you have to get a little specific about how you do it. Simply because aluminum, you ever rub your hand on anything that's got an aluminum coating, your hand is completely silver. It's basically like trying to get it clean enough to paint over the top of it. It's kind of like painting over dirt, you know. So I like to leave them aluminum. Anyway, this is a good candidate for, I would call, overcoating it. So, and I'm not saying you have to do it now. The overflow discharge, KDHE and AWWA both state that the overflow is supposed to be terminated at 12 to 24 inches above grade, have a flapper screen and a splash pad. What you have now works just fine, honestly. It goes down below grade, and you can see on the picture on the right, it ends up at the street. But according to the regulations, that's the way it's supposed to be. It should be cut off with a splash pad, and then the water's still going to run to the exact same place. But that's just my job to point those things out.
Okay.
The interior dry of that tank is in overall pretty good shape till you get just below bottom of the bowl where you can see the peeling coatings there. The other thing I'll point out is the safety climb. It's got a tube style safety climb, and I would certainly switch that to a cable style. Try to get everything the same on all of your tanks, first of all, as far as the climbing system goes. That's just looking up at the base cone at the very bottom of the tank there. And then the picture on the left is underneath the bowl. As we get up into the tank, well, so basically you climb up a tube through the bowl, onto the roof, open up a hatch, and then you look into the water tank, into the tank itself. You can see that there is quite a bit of corrosion starting that's been there. And I compared pictures from a couple of years ago when I was here, and it's increased, and it's going to continue to. The other thing that is a little different with this tank than a lot of them is just the rafters that are in it. And that's something that's always a concern, especially when you look at these rafters and how they are, I don't know, you can see how they're skip welded, stitch welded, skip welded, that type of thing. So there's inaccessible areas there for coatings. So that, I mean, really they look pretty good from a distance, but you never really know till you get a blast hose on them. I've had I can name 5 tanks I've done in the past 5 years where half of them, once we started blasting the rafters, they just fell. In fact, I'm doing one right now. They're finishing up welding on it today in Iola, where we're having to replace all the rafters in that one. I don't think these are that bad, but it's just something to be aware of. You just have no way of knowing until you put a blast hose on them. This is on top of the tank as you're coming out, that dry riser. On the left there, you can see where the lights are. That's where you come up through it. And then further to the left is the access into the bowl. The picture on the right is actually a lower view of that dry riser, and that's actually serving as your vent. Okay, this tank doesn't have a separate vent. That riser that's in there, it moves. It's got a gap and it moves. And 100% of the time the screens are damaged, don't work, and AWWA and KDHE both state that you're supposed to have a vent that is fail-safe in nature. So my recommendation here is that's not proper. I'd seal that up. Seal that up and put a proper vent on that's recommended. This is looking back in the tank again. And when I'm talking about that floating dry riser, you can see on that picture on the left, that's the tube coming up through. You can see that gap in there where, I mean, something could get into your tank where that screen is damaged.
Yeah.
Here's a little better picture of some rafters. So these are all my recommendations. Installing cable safety climbs, sealing the non-compliant vent, installing a compliant fail-safe vent. Another part of that is another thing I didn't bring up is that you're supposed to have at least 2 ways in and out of any confined space. So you'd also put in a confined space entry to get it up to code. And then the overflow pipe we talked about, and then just planning for the future on the exterior. I'm not saying you have to paint the exterior right now. It would just be doing it in a logical sequence. And then installing a new coating system on the interior. And I would think about caulking those rafters too after the coating system is in to prevent corrosion, to help prevent corrosion. So your south tank. Coatings are in good shape. It's just aged. It's chalky. It gets real porous. You're lucky you live where you live. If it were somewhere else, it would be a dirty, filthy mess. But you don't have those conditions where you live so much. It has a zinc epoxy urethane system on the outside of it. It's just aged and chalky and time to be rejuvenated. The interior dry, all looks great. Here you can see this one does have a cable for the safety climb that's on it, which is really good. It's all in good shape. Here we're going onto the roof. Now that's what the vent should look like. That's what a fail-safe vent looks like. That vent is also serving as the secondary access point. You can see it's got a flange on it so you can take it off. As you get on the interior, it looks like it should for its age. Actually, it looks better than I thought it really would for its age, for being that old. There's corrosion starting on corners and edges like it does. That's where it always starts with. You can see that there is some corrosion. That's on the dry access tube, that picture on the left. This one, there have been some attempts at touching up on the interior of the bowl, which quite honestly, it doesn't work anyway. I mean, you're painting underwater over rust, and you're just covering it up. The rust is still there. And I would just take that cable safety climb off. You got a dissimilar metal thing going on there that just causes more corrosion. I would just get rid of it. Here's more pictures of the interior. That's up at the roof line. Like I said, it's starting. And a lot of times what happens on tanks like this style is where the ice might rub on the sidewalls, it starts getting thinner there. Of course, there's no way to know that at this point, but a lot of times what happens is it all looks pretty good and then all of a sudden it goes pretty quick. because the coatings are just getting thinner and thinner where the ice is rubbing on the sidewalls. So my recommendations here were to just plan for overcoating in the exterior of the tank. It doesn't need to be blasted. It needs to be cleaned and overcoated. It's in great shape. There's no reason for it. The interior system, I need to start planning for blasting and repainting that also.
Okay.
Now for the cone top tank, power plant tank. This one's got a few more issues. I mean, look at that old steel. I mean, it's just black as could be, right? I mean, it's coming off in chunks on the legs, well, various places. There's decisions that need to be made here with, you know, maybe some cost-benefit analysis of what it would take to, I mean, the right thing to do with the tank exterior is to blast it all off and start over, right? I mean, you can make it last a lot longer. The problem is it's got a lead-based primer on it and requires containment and big costs and that type of thing. So there are alternative ways of coating the tank. There's 3 different ways that this tank could be done, in my opinion. And you just have to kind of weigh out what makes the most sense long-term and financially. So that would be a part of the process. The ladders are not up to OSHA code. You're supposed to have at least 7 inches of space, and I mean the ladders are at least 80 years old. Maybe I don't know how old that tank is, but I bet it's every bit of 80. Do you know, Kent?
30s, I thought.
30s? Yeah. So, yeah, 90. So anyway, I'd replace the ladders. The ladder on the right is actually on the inside of the tank, and a new manway was put on, and you can't get to it anyway. So that one should probably be altered so that it could actually be used, moved. Here's more stuff with the coatings. That picture on the left is actually up on the roof of the tank. It's doing the same thing up there. The foundations are also in pretty rough shape. They're in bad shape.
Probably more immediate concern.
I don't think that there's anything structurally probably wrong with them. I think they need to be excavated and properly repaired. I mean, it's just too much moisture intrusion that's gotten into them and spalled them out. Another part would be the handrail. Handrail's supposed to be 42 inches tall. It's supposed to have a mid-rail. It's supposed to have a kick plate. This handrail, I go by, 42 inches, 36 inches. It feels safe to me. But I would at least put a mid-rail across there, just because those openings are just too big. And then there's another picture of one of the other foundations. I know this is kind of a silly looking picture, but that's the bottom of the bowl of your tank. So I know it's kind of blown up, but it's got a grate in there in the bottom of the bowl. I mean, basically, if there's nothing in that riser opening, it's just a slide that takes you straight down, right?
Yep.
So there needs to be something there, and I just don't have a way of knowing. The divers could not get into this tank because, and I'll show you why, they couldn't get to the ladder, so we couldn't get down to the bottom. And besides, all the dirt and everything that are in this tank, they're all in the bottom of the mud drum, all the way at the bottom of this riser pipe where the tank actually fills. So I wanted to show you this picture to show you that it's really pretty clean in there. I mean, the water looks good. This is one of the big issues. It's got these rods that go across, these spider rods, and a hub in the center. That does not provide any structural support. And, I mean, there's even they left boards up there on top of them, I guess for people to work off of. Those should be removed. They're in the way. They're not necessary. They're not structural. And that caused us problems trying to dive it because we just couldn't get through them. The other point would be you're not supposed to have any openings in your tank. And as you can see, there's a gap all the way around. And that roof is being held down. It's got a roof structure that's holding it down, but there's also clips. And you can see the picture on the on the left there where there's nothing, the clips are not
Yeah.
holding anything. Here's another picture of the roof structure and the spider rod and hubs. At some point, had cathodic protection system going in. You don't use that anymore, do you, Neil? No. Yeah. That should all be taken out. There was a cathodic protection system in there. With the coatings that are available now, there's no reason to even have that. But you can see the corrosion. So there's a long list there. All the things I just mentioned, repairing the leg foundations. One thing I didn't bring up was that this is another tank where the overflow goes below grade to the storm drain, I think, right? Yeah. There again, it all ends up there anyway. And it's funny to me that KDHE is not very, sometimes they say things about it, sometimes they don't. So I don't have a problem. I mean, but at some point, somebody's going to make you move it, is my point.
Yeah.
So when you're doing work, that's when you should do it. So all the things I just talked about, seal welding the roof back down, which is a major project. Trying to get rid of that gap is tough. That's a major project. But honestly, structurally, I mean, the tank is good. It just needs some updating. It's done good for a long time. So, the way to do this stuff is varied. You can just say, you can hire an engineer or the city does it and you just put it out for bid or whatever, in that manner. And then you knock one thing out at a time or whatever. That's one way of doing it. That typically carries with it a 1-year warranty, and you somewhat lose control over who's doing the work also, sometimes, could. Another way of doing it is setting a defined scope. I would just call it a term maintenance program where you take a block of time, you take 10 years, 12 years, 15, whatever, 5 years, whatever you want it to be, and then you systematically you plan out the work over a period of time, and then you're able to spread that cost out, makes it more budgetable, and it's a good way to look at it. And then and you would do inspections and clean outs and all that within that period of time also. The nice part about it is, doing it that way is, you get a little more peace of mind. It's whoever would be doing the work would be responsible for it. It'd be like a little more of a kind of a warranty situation. That would be another way of doing it. At the end of that period of time then you're starting all over again, okay? With more maintenance for the future. And the third way is a full service maintenance program, which is basically the same thing as the term maintenance program, except it continues on further down the road, which is what you had with your park tank. So in my opinion, the way it works pretty well is to make this collaborative, working together to try and figure out what the best solutions are financially and quality-wise, and trying to come up with a plan is the whole point. And really the only way that works is for people to work together to come up with something. So,
There was also 2 other tanks that Rick looked at, which was the Clearwell tanks at the water treatment plant.
mhm.
And there's no, except the regular maintenance, there's no immediate considerations with those 2 tanks, so.
There shouldn't be. Those are stainless steel. Other than maybe, some loose bolts or something like that that could happen there. There's really shouldn't be a lot of maintenance there. And those were super clean on the inside.
But the main question that we're gonna have going forward is the difference between a set of projects at once or a larger list of projects over a set period of time. Because the list of projects is gonna be too expensive to all do at once, as you can see from the number of items that were stated. This is not a set of anything, this is just for your, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about.
Okay?
So, in this scenario, I just listed all your tanks, and then I listed out basically a 10-year period of time and what it could look like over a period of time with getting the necessary things done to your tanks, including inspections and everything else. This isn't written in stone, it's just a way to look at it to try and help understand. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It's very nice.
It's trying to set up the priority of it, and it could be moved around yet too. And that would be part of the inspections. If something came up that you needed, that became more of a priority, then it could be adapted, is my point. But this would be a typical kind of framework how that might work.
And when Rick talks about collaborative, that's both Neil and I discussing with him about what's the set of projects and the priority of which projects. Whether it's a set amount for an immediate to take care of, or a little more than what's immediate, having that spread out over a set period of time. So.
First of all, I want to say thank you for coming out.
You bet.
I really do appreciate this obviously very well done report that you've done for us. You know, that we really do appreciate that. Unfortunately, one of the things it does is, you know, it brings all these things to our attention that
Right.
we now need to address.
I know, I'm the bearer of bad news a lot, trust me.
Which is, you know, it's good. It's good. We need to know that stuff. But I guess one big question I would have is, you know, it's hard to kind of think in terms of how we want to proceed without having any kind of a ballpark. What kind of dollars are we looking at here? You know?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, in my head, I can ballpark saying it's probably, if you did all the work right, if you did everything that I listed there right now, it'd probably be $750,000, I'd guess, maybe a little more.
It's actually a much smaller number than I had right around in my brain. So.
Well, it could be more if you want, I mean, if you want more, it could be. But
Yeah,
the point
no,
is,
yeah,
I'm saying
that's
that's
good, yeah.
like right now. Well, and that's overcoating it too. Like, if you decided to do the full containment, you know, now I'm adding 300,000 right there. So now we're at $1 million.
Yeah.
It depends on that part of it, and that's where we got to kind of look at things to see what makes sense for you guys long term, so you know what to expect and what not to expect. I mean, so yeah, you're right, it is more.
Yeah.
And the overcoat way of doing that tank would obviously be a lot less, but the problem's still going to be there down the road. So it's whether you want to bite it off now or later.
So I guess it's been a while since I've purchased a water tower. How much does something new cost?
Well, if you go to the water tower lot, they're all over $1 million anymore. I would guess that, you know, your two spheres would be in the $1.5 million to $2 million range a piece, probably closer to 2 now, something like that. Yeah, so you probably have, I don't know, $5 million worth, maybe 7 in assets there. I mean, honestly, when you think about it, it's probably, your water towers are probably your largest single dollar, highest dollar asset if you add them up that the city has. No. Honestly, there's nothing wrong with any of them.
Yeah,
I mean, they
it was
can
good
all
to hear
be
you say that.
rejuvenated.
It sounded like, other than just kind of normal wear and tear over the
Yeah.
years, everything seems to be pretty well structurally okay,
I think so.
or appears to be anyway.
We work on ones that are a lot rougher than these, believe me. Well, you have one that is. I mean,
Right.
the roof on the one
Yeah.
is for sure.
But it's important that you do maintenance projects as you go along.
Right.
Well, and if you do them on a timely schedule, it'll save you money, because if you do wait longer, it costs more.
Bingo. That's like my goal in life, and I really deal with this a lot in really small towns. And once you get so far behind, you just can't catch up. I mean, that's what maintenance is, right? I mean, if you wait for everything to fail, it's going to cost a lot more. And that's the point of all of this, and trying to plan it out over a period of time.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we're kind of running across with a lot of the infrastructure in town is, a lot of things have been around a long time.
Yep.
And we're trying to get ahead of as much stuff as we can, so.
Yeah.
Sure, but, yeah, anybody have any other questions for Rick? Kent, do you have
You might
anything?
ask if Neil had any comments at all regarding the water tank inspection report.
And even that one, lose that one, we would be in trouble during the summer, as small as it is. And it's half the size of the others.
Well, I think there's definitely a lot of food for thought. We'll definitely cuss and discuss and
Sure.
be in touch as we try to figure out how we want to proceed.
All right, well, thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, well, let's move on to the next item, B, which is the Traffic Engineering Assistance Program Study, the TEAP study. Kent?
This study was requested by the city of Goodland, I think back when Andrew was city manager. I'm not sure. But it was before I started. And somehow it got lost in the shuffle, and they didn't provide us a copy of their evaluation.
I think it was, I don't recall this. I think it was before we started.
Oh, really?
So I think it's been a while.
Might have been. But the purpose of this, the TEAP study, which is a Traffic Engineering Assistance Program study, is to evaluate the appropriateness of the existing traffic signals at the intersections of 11th and Main and 12th and Main in Good. Now, a similar type study would trying to discuss with KDOT to go ahead and do at K27 and Highway 24, which we know we're going to have some discussions with KDOT about regarding the traffic signal cam. This is a little simpler study for them to complete. Obviously, it's within the central business district, and the street characteristics and traffic patterns are typical for 4 of their thing, it does have in the middle there, the MUTCD provides guidance for determining the need for traffic signal control, which is on page 40 of the PDF, Josh, if you're trying to get to that point. Page 40 of the PDF, which is page 4 of the study, which is towards the beginning, just 3 pages
Yeah,
past the
I know.
executive summary. And all I'm trying to point out is the warrants for the traffic signal includes 9 different ones that they use. 8-hour vehicular volume, 4-hour vehicular volume, peak hour pedestrian volume, school crossing, coordinated signal system, crash experience, roadway network, and intersection near a grade crossing near railroad. So when they say it was just number 6 warrants the traffic signal, that is just with the coordinated signal system. And then they go through a lot of analysis, which I won't go through here. It's in the packet. And then they give the alternatives, what could happen, what they considered, which included making a roundabout, which it's a little tight in those areas to have a roundabout, but I suppose it could be done. But, and then they come up with their base and alternative recommendations. Which is really, do we keep the stoplights or we don't?
Mhm.
So that was the report. And there's dozens of pages of data at the end of the report through the appendices. And do you guys have any questions or concerns with that report?
Seems to me it's like one of those rare times when the cheapest idea is probably the best idea. I don't want to put in a roundabout, and I don't think we're wasting money if we're trying to upgrade those signals, so I, for one, am in favor of putting in some stop signs.
Yeah, it was kind of, I really like the one on page 3. If you want to scroll back up, where it just has the intersection and the number of vehicles that went through the intersection or turn or whatever at each time period. And it was kind of interesting to see that even on the busiest time, on the busiest intersection, there was barely more than a vehicle a minute that passed through in any direction on that. I mean, it feels when you're in it, it feels like there's more than that at times, but you know, I was kind of surprised to see how little traffic actually goes through those intersections at a given time. I also have talked with quite a few people recently about just the idea in general, and I'm almost kind of surprised by, I don't think I had a single person that I talked to who said we need to keep those. In fact, more overwhelmingly, it was, we should get rid of those. There's no point in having them down there. We don't even understand why we have them there. You know, and I kind of like Jason. I don't think that they're wrong. It just, at least at this juncture in our life of the city of Goodland, there doesn't seem to be a relevant reason to have stoplights there on Main Street where they are.
Well, it was certainly an eye-opening experience for me to hear exactly what it costs to install and maintain those. And if that's going to be the number that we're looking at, then it makes sense to put in stop signs there. So,
There are 2 considerations always to keep in mind, I think, regarding the stoplights. One is, and I do notice it north of 11th to 8th, that because I cross 10th every single day, 4 times a day sometimes, as a pedestrian and also in the vehicle, that the speed does pick up the more blocks you have without any traffic control device. And I don't notice it much because I don't drive it as much. that whole length from 12th to 17th. The road's a little rougher, obviously, because the bricks haven't been redone in those blocks. But, you know, you have Central Elementary, you know, down a
Mhm.
block, 2 blocks down. So that does help a little bit, slow down traffic. But without the 2 traffic signals, what, would there be complaints about speed and the enforced speed enforcement along Main Street? Just a consideration. I mean, that's not a reason to go one way or the other. The other thing with the traffic lights that it does do, I don't know if that's proper English, sorry about that, but that it does is it provides a protection for pedestrians crossing the street. I notice when I cross 10th Street, like I said, 4 times a day, I'm got my head on a swivel. I'm trying to cross that as a pedestrian. And I'm a big guy, so it's not, you know, they'll see me most of the time, but I can see where that can be an issue at times for people crossing the road. Doesn't mean that's the reason, and I agree regarding cost and time, and is it really useful at all? And I think I've mentioned to all of you before, I'm also surprised, why is there one at 2 blocks in a row? You know, why were those 2 kept at that location? But it's just considerations of the subject as a whole.
Yeah, you know, and I'm not sure I have no idea what the original reasoning was for 11th and 12th. I don't know if anybody
I don't know.
does or not, but I mean, I do agree that, you know, traffic will probably run a little quicker if there's no stoplights. You know, another concern that I have personally is, you know, if you're on a side street crossing Main, sometimes it is hard to see around the vehicles that are parked on Main Street, so you're gonna have to edge out a little bit. But yeah, I don't know, is the cost to basically have to update and maintain the traffic lights worth the offset of whatever additional safety features it may or may not provide?
Right.
Do we know when they were installed? Because weren't they a flashing red and a flashing orange at one time, or were they always?
Not those 2. I'm at your name,
Those-
lights, 2 and 3. Red lights were 8th and Main. 8th and Main, 11th and
Broadway, 17th and Main, all had flashing reds. 8th and Caldwell had flashing red lights. And Highway 24, 27 had a flashing red light. So, there was 2 Gaddis guys that came out today, and we talked on the Highway 24, 27, some of the issues that we've been having out there. Hopefully we got that kind of taken care of, but he did ask me about the 2 traffic controllers downtown, because he knows that the controllers themselves will have to be replaced. We did replace the one on Highway 24, 27, and I think it was about $5,000 just for that one controller. So those are coming just because of the age. I mean, we're lucky to get the use that we've gotten out of those 2. So, and he did talk about school zone because of the age of our school zone stuff, that we've had discussions with them. But, yeah, they're probably 1995 to 98, somewhere in there. They're about 25 years old.
The controllers in the cabinet.
Yes.
Not the
The entire.
structure, the poles themselves.
No, well, the poles have been there longer than that. But those traffic controllers from Gaddis, they've been there since 98, I believe was the install date on it. And then we've updated them through the city, we've updated the pedestrian crossings with LEDs and stuff like that, but all of the wiring and everything that's there is 25+ years old.
It was the 24-27 light was flashing red this weekend, I think, or a couple of days ago. Was there an issue with that?
Yeah, we think we found it. We're hoping we found it. When they came out and installed the new controller out there, I don't think that he had the connection tight enough. So their guy that we used to deal with, Robert, he's moving down to Oklahoma to deal more with the EV charging stuff that they do. And they have a new tech from Anaheim, California that moved his family out. And he's pretty bright. But he went and showed us the conflict monitor where we can pull up all of that information from any fault that's ever occurred out there since we've installed it. And all of those faults came back to a common voltage issue, which was probably from the loose connection inside the control panel. So I am going to send my guys out there and we're going to put a screwdriver on all connections just to make sure. But yeah, it's frustrating for us to get called out at 5:30. And, you know, a lot of it has to do with heat. You know, I think the day that was called out last week was 100 degrees. So hopefully we have that kind of taken care of.
So what's our next step?
Well, I think, seems like you guys have a general consensus to go ahead with the stop sign recommendation, or the base recommendation. We'll come back with a proposal on what it would take to do that. And, what's the cost and what's the time frame, those type of things.
Yeah, you know,
And
and
get a
it's,
final decision from you guys.
yeah, it's a big enough issue. We definitely need input from the other two commissioners that are here as well. I think another thing we can, you know, we can take them down and put up stop signs, you know, leave the poles for an extended period of time. You know, if we're gonna be ended up eating the cost of replacing all that stuff anyway, if we decide to keep the stoplights, you know, we're not necessarily out much if we switch it over. It turns out we don't like it or it doesn't work as well as we thought, to then have to go back and hang them up, I suppose. Just
That's
another thought, another idea, but. Yeah, you can bring something back a little more formal to address it.
We can do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to C, which is the follow-up to the joint meeting we had last Monday. Or most specifically for us regarding the Woollock building and the floodplain map. Kent?
We'll take the easier one. Well, easier in, as far as an update on it, not an easier issue. But the floodplain map, it is getting scheduled to have the state floodplain coordinator and another person with the National Flood Insurance Program to attend virtually the county commission meeting in September, or one of the commission meetings in September. And that way they can have a discussion about what that entails and get a lot of questions answered from those two folks. And then we'll see what the county commission wants to do from that point. But they were more than willing to meet, and the county commission was more than willing to schedule it and be able to have a conversation. So I appreciate that.
And just as a reminder, Ken, what is our benefit of having the floodplain map updated from where it is currently?
One of the biggest reasons is that we have different network of streets at one location that encompassed one flood zone. So that really needs to be corrected or addressed or identified with the new network. There used to be a Y at Highway 24 and Cherry Street, And now it is just a T intersection with Pioneer Park providing some flood detention. Not retention, it doesn't hold it forever, but some detention. So that will affect the floodplain map, both for that area and where it drains out. So that'll be important information. There's also been, since that floodplain map was completed in 1981, there's obviously been some housing built in Goodland since that time. So it would be, and especially on the northeast quadrant of the city, how that drainage has been affected by that. And whether that still occurs, and also how it gets underneath the airport and out to the creek that's on the north side of town. It should be important to know those type of things. And that if there would be, I mean, we had some decent rains this year. Fortunately, we didn't have, like it's had in other parts of the country, where a really big rain over a very short period of time. If we would have a flood designation, it would help us to have an updated map to qualify for certain types of assistance. It's just another avenue of thought that goes into why that should be looked at and updated at regular intervals. So that's just a couple things.
Okay, very good.
Anything else?
Out on that
The Warlock building, there's been a little bit of introduced as a topic, been asked at various times, either by county officials, either elected or appointed officials, or by what the situation is now that we have merged fire department, and the fire department and the ambulance use the Warlock building. And the city at this point insures the building and the exterior of the building. And the county insures all the vehicles, the equipment and materials, everything that's on the inside of the building. Makes it kind of clunky. And
We still insure our vehicles.
and then the mayor points out we still insure our vehicles, which the vehicle's a separate topic. And we talked with both the city, with Jake, the city attorney, and Brent as the county attorney, as far as getting that clarified and have an amendment to the agreement. It's not as clearly stated as probably it should be. It would just make it absolutely clear regarding the vehicles and get that taken care of.
Yeah.
But the insurance situation makes it awkward. And then it costs, obviously, the city additional money to insure it. The building itself, the city put in a lot of money to acquire the building. They started with a lease in 2002. And that had an initial lease that was $80-some thousand. And then they ended up purchasing the entire building for about $500,000 worth. But then the county has that was for a remodel for an economic development project, because it used to be a grocery store once upon a time. I wasn't anywhere around during that time. But then it was revised into a manufacturer.
Yep.
And the city was involved with that, and then that didn't work out, and then the county started using it. They had to remodel it and spent quite a bit of money to remodel for fire department and ambulance uses. And I don't have that figure with me about how much the county spent on the building, but they spent quite a bit of their resources on the building to make it theirs.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's, you know, do you want to proceed with moving that building over into a county-owned building? Or not?
To me, it makes sense to do that, for the building to go with the fire department and everything. The only thing I would probably have a problem with would be the right to be, I don't know what the word is. If they ever wanted to get rid of the building, we have that right to get it back, and then to keep the Wallach name on the building for said future.
Yeah, I think City Attorney Kling identified that as a reverter clause.
Yeah.
That it reverts back to the owner.
We have any idea what kind of cost savings as far as building insurance we're gonna have?
I don't have that identified, and now that you ask it, I wish I'd asked, come up with that number ahead of time, but it's mixed in with our property insurance, so.
Yeah.
I
I guess
don't think it's identified separately, is it, Mary?
I think each property is listed separately, so it should be there. But I honestly was looking for that other information and I didn't get to that.
I think it identifies what we insure it for, but I don't know if the cost is identified there. Anyhow, we will have that for you.
I think you're right. It is for what we insure. The
Right.
replacement cost.
Replacement cost of the building.
I guess I kind of feel like it needs to be part of a larger conversation with how we feel the merger as a whole is at this point in this juncture. Like we're 3 years into it now, I think. I think it was about 3 years ago we did it. And there's obviously other issues. When we did the merger, we kind of went into it assuming that things would have to be adjusted and things fixed as they come across issues that don't work for the city and county, as we're going along. But it's been a while since we've really revisited that. From the outside looking in, it feels like it's working really well, and there's no reason why it shouldn't work well for a long period of time. I feel like it probably needs to be a bigger discussion, though, as far as where it sits, what issues maybe have come up regarding like the vehicles or the building ownership or anything else that maybe is something that's in there that needs to be addressed, but just hasn't been brought to the surface and discussed, and kind of maybe try to take care of everything all at once, or as a short time period as possible, if it's something that we feel like is going to last long term, to get this as a more permanent kind of a move. But as far as the building goes, as far as everything's okay, I don't have an issue with that. I do like his caveats that he said, but I also there is a lot of value in the building as well, and we just want to just give up that value to the county just because it's the county, or there's need to be other considerations in there regarding a purchase price, or I think it's part of a bigger conversation, I think, but I think it needs to be part of a larger conversation as to how everything is going as a whole. That's how I would view it anyway. But, or maybe that's too much to tackle as one big conversation. It's my piece.
I think that's a good point regarding, it appears to be working well. It appears to will work well for the next decade. I mean, it doesn't appear that there's going to be any issues, but that doesn't mean there can't be.
Yeah.
And but it isn't just the fire merger. It's a piece of property that and a building that can have many functions. It's already had
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 functions already. So this doesn't mean this is the function for until the end of time, you know, at this point.
I think both of the caveats that Commissioner Howard brought up would be things that would be important to me, looking at both of those. I guess, you know, I feel like firemen are pretty good at letting us know if things aren't going well. I feel like somebody would have said something already if it wasn't. I feel like what you say, you know, outside looking in, everything looks like it's running well. It's been a partnership that is, I think, given us a top-notch fire department and emergency services, and I would support moving that building over to the county. I think it just makes sense financially for us, but also just so the county has all their equipment in their own building. They own it. They take care of it. I think it just kind of clears the waters for us.
One other thing that I don't think was mentioned last week at the joint meeting is that the parcel that includes that property also includes the parking lot on to the north of the City Hall building. Now, whether that parcel, if that's part of it or not part of it, should be also a consideration for the commission. And there's different things involved with that as well. We have made, you know, our street department, I guess, did some additional work in front of the Warlock building. Is doing an additional concrete area to help the drainage around the Warlock building. And the rest of the the rest of the parking lot to the north here, it is starting to show some issues. It's still functional, but it is starting to show some issues. I can say that correctly. Don't have any other suggestions or recommendations beyond that, so.
Well, it feels like everybody's definitely at least willing to consider the idea of moving the property towards the county in whatever form that may take. But
Okay.
anybody else have any other thoughts left over from last week's meeting you want to bring up? Okay. Well, let's move on then. If we want to circle back around to the nativity scene, if we want to have any further discussion on that this evening, or if I think Danny had something he wanted to share with us regarding that idea.
Well, when this all came about, John had contacted me and that was kind of asking me about it. And so I had a few concerns. I guess my concerns, I think it'd be a great asset. My concerns were driving T-posts in the lawn with the sprinkler system and the electrical, which, you know, I can mark that. That's no problem. We can get together and work that out. And then I know when the scene was up the hospital, you know, there was drop cords running all over the place like crazy up there, but there's no electrical outlets up in Rosewood did, and they're talking about their solar lighting, which that would be fine too. There is minimal vandalism up there, but maybe with the neighbors, you know, watching out too, kind of help that. So anyway, I kind of thought it over and looked around and kind of gave my input on it, and then I had went and visited with Kent. Kent and I started visiting about it. And then we, since we do have a Parks Board, Kent and I took it to the Parks Board one evening, and it worked out great because these guys was having a meeting across the street. So we invited them over to the Parks Board meeting and kind of got everybody up to speed what was going on, what they wanted to do. And so Kent and I kind of, you know, having a Parks Board, Kent and I left it in their ballpark to make some recommendations to you guys, you know, what they thought. And we didn't have a meeting, that was a couple meetings ago. We didn't have a meeting last month. We have a meeting Wednesday night, 2 nights.
Is it 2 nights or a week from 2 nights?
I think it's Wednesday night.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so I guess where we stand is we're waiting on a recommendation from the Parks Board. I mean, that's kind of their board to help decide some of these things, Parks and Rec Board. So we're, the only thing they asked in the meeting was, they'd asked John if he had talked to all the neighbors, you know, kind of seen what all the neighbors think about it. Some like it lit up there, some don't. But kind of go through the neighborhood, and John had talked to some of them and kind of get an input on them on traffic and the lighting and stuff. And so I think they're kind of waiting on that. And then another question they had was how many displays? And I think John said around 12, if I remember right. 8? Okay. They was kind of wanting on, that was a question they had also. But that's kind of where we're at now is we're waiting on the board to make a recommendation to Kent and I so we can take it to you to get this thing finalized.
If it was set up, would it be set up for about a month? You think is kind of what you're thinking? How long? First of the year. 'Cause I guess one concern I've kind of thought about as the music's gone on is, you know, the grasses are very different in Rosewood than they are over at the hospital with a month or a month plus of those sitting on the grass cause permanent dead spots in the current.
I really don't think so. I mean, we're usually, I have that thing shut down, winterized before Halloween. And then, like I say, but my biggest concern would be getting everything marked before the snow flies,
Yeah.
where we can put T-posts and where we can't. That's kind of my biggest concern. So, I mean, we can work around it.
Yeah.
Like I say, that's kind of where Kent and I are at. We're waiting for a recommendation from the Parks Board to see
If
what
we-
questions, concerns they have.
You think, John, if we had an answer for you by our next meeting, which would be about 2 weeks from now, would that give you plenty of time to be able to, because you need time to tackle the project if you're gonna do it, is what you're coming, yeah.
We're working on it currently already, so this is our first choice of having the park. That's not an option. If we do, maybe turn around the other way on the private property, the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would just be more beneficial to have it flow.
Yeah, I think it would flow better if it was all in the park for sure. Yeah, if we were able to bring this back up next meeting, that would give the Parks Board a chance to meet one more time and kind of have a final discuss and determine what their recommendation is towards us, and then maybe next meeting we can determine what our final response is towards that, if that would give you enough time, you think? Think that's all right with everybody? Yeah, okay, and we'll shoot for that then.
Like I say, if we could get, you know, if the Parks Board could get some input from the neighbors, because I know when we put some of the neighbors wanted extra lighting up there, and Dustin put in some extra lighting, 'cause it was dark up there, and we was having a little vandalism. Well, some of the neighbors wasn't too keen on that, so Dustin put some baffles on the lights to baffle them down a little bit. So, but I think it's important to get the input from the neighbors, because, you know, that's gonna be lit up all the way around there. Some might like it, and some might not, but
Yeah.
the Parks Department, that's the only concern I have is marking the sprinklers for posts.
You know, I think at that time of year, most everybody up there has some sort of lights up anyway, so it's extra bright anyway, so I wouldn't foresee a problem.
I guess one question, and this is not necessarily for you, Danny, this is more for Kent, maybe this is something that we need to have a formalized answer on, and I'll just start this by saying I support having it in the park as a Christian. do we leave ourselves any legal liability to have such a large religious display on city property? And I don't know if that's a Jake question that he needs to let us know what his opinion is there. I
Be a
just-
Jake question, and I'll be heading to the league tomorrow anyway, and ask them as well if there's
Yep.
been changes. But I don't know, Jake, if you have an immediate answer or not.
I didn't know if Jake was here, sorry, I couldn't
He's
see around the
he's hiding
corner.
around the corner.
So one of the things you're really touching on is a constitutional principle, right?
Mm.
It's not just, what's out there, it's what's allowed to be out there. Most of the time, places got in trouble when they, classic is, no, it's the Ten Commandments, they put on a permanent display in front of the courthouse. Well, it was a permanent structure, it was there, but it also was, what happens, or what was run into is, you allow that, but then say some other religious organization, other affiliation, if they want to display something, that is where you need to consult on this spot where, well, it's allowed this, which seems like an enforcement, what we do to it. If you say, no, we're not going to allow that, that's the thing where you're referring to, whether or not certain organizations are not. Sanction that class. I don't think we have a problem allowing it, just be aware of something like this come up, and you have to question, okay, there's nothing to help. Okay, yeah, it needs to be on this side. There's a 4-year constitutional law, you can tell you about it. That is simple enough. We can be allowed. People can't go and create some very out there art and claim that no, it is not there too. There are some decency protections.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think that ever came up in the discussion between both parties, the last discussion we had, so. Yeah, it is. Never thought about it. Like I say, that's what Kent and I was waiting for, is just, we have a parks board, we might as well use them. Let them make a recommendation to the commission that, because that's what we got them for.
Okay, well, hopefully by next meeting, everything will be discussed, and we'll be able to have a good answer for you.
I'll get, or ask the neighbors who, get more official, consensus of.
Thank you.
All right, yep, thank you, Dan. Anybody else have any other discussion items they wish to bring up this evening? Well, let's move on to reports, starting with our city manager, Kent.
Not too many major things officially on the report, just the month-end budget report is included in your packet, also the police monthly activity report. Notice that the police department or police chief had added a report, and it kind of ended up on the PDF a little bit hazardous or mismatched as far as the
A little bit
columns.
back and forth, trying to
Yeah.
line it all up in there.
But it just identified all the different drug seizures that have occurred over the last year and a half. It was interesting information. Also, the League of Kansas Municipalities annual meeting in Wichita. The mayor might say something more about that.
I just want to encourage anybody who thinks they might want to go to sign up to go. It's October 7th through 9th, I believe. Kent and I are both planning on going. And we would encourage anybody else. It's just, they give you a lot of good information regarding, not only what you do while you're sitting up here, but lots of other issues that affect your municipality. There's lots of breakout groups for lots of different things, and it's just lots of good information to be had, and it makes you come out a better commissioner on the other side. That's me, I think. But if something you wish you want to go to or attend, just sooner rather than later at this point, let Kent know and
We'll take care of it from there.
get you set up. That's Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Sunday, Monday's the main part.
Mainly, yeah.
Also, I'm heading to Topeka tomorrow to attend the policy committee meeting at the League of Kansas Municipalities in Topeka. I'll actually be heading there tonight, so I can get there without getting up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning for when the meeting starts. So it's important what they pass along information for the upcoming legislative session, what the in-between legislative sessions is coming about, and also regarding the statement of municipal policy that the whole league puts together. And they have 4 different committees that meet, and I chose to participate, which I have in previous years with another committee, utilities committee meeting. So they concentrate on the issues that are focused with the municipal utilities. So it's a lot of good information that gets passed on with that. But I'll be back by tomorrow afternoon, so. Other than that, I'll just leave it at that at this point.
You okay over there? Almost? Goodness. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions, comments for our city manager, Ken? Thank you, sir. All right, we'll move on to commissioner reports. We'll start over here on my left with Commissioner Howard.
I don't have anything.
Over here on my right with Commissioner Showalter.
Just wanted to tell the police department I thought that the incident the other night went well. Appreciate any time we can go to a serious call like that and there's nobody that gets hurt on either side. So I don't know anything about the case, but I know that everybody's fine and it's all that matters. So.
Absolutely. And for mayor's report, I have nothing more to add this evening. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Showalter,
Second.
second by Commissioner Howard. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you, everybody.